Hello and welcome to Rad Chat, the multi-award-winning therapeutic radiographer-led oncology podcast. My name's Jo McNamara and I'm joined by fellow host Norman Joel Canderson.
Hi everyone.
So we're here at UKIO. We're so giddy to have our next guest in the pod box as one of our first early adopters of Rad Chat. Do you want to introduce yourself?
So hi, I'm Dr. Janice St Matthews and I'm Head of Allied Health Professions at NHS England.
So a really fancy title. What do you do?
So since last time I spoke to you, I've changed roles.
Amazing.
So Head of Allied Health Professions, so still in the office of the Chief AHP Officer, and very much about strategy and policy. So the last time I spoke to you was about the strategy development. And as you know, it represents 200,000 AHPs, which include diagnostic and therapeutic radiographers. And that strategy is our Northern Star now for everyone who lives in England. So our work is around enabling that, and we also ensuring that that strategy is realised and all the components of the strategy as well.
Do you enjoy what you do?
I absolutely love it. If you had said to me at the start of my career that I was going to do strategy and policy, and even now when I say it, people say strategy and policy, it's just absolutely immense. And I think what's really fantastic is that it leans into my academic background, my clinical background, my teaching background, my research background. So all those skills come together in a really, really unique way.
Amazing. And in terms of your PhD, for anyone who maybe didn't see it on social media, can you share a little bit about what it was and what that then led to?
So my professional doctorate,
Sorry. No,
that's okay. There's lots of doctorates available, other ones available other than PhD. So my professional doctorate, which was probably the most anticipated doctorate in radiography, because I used to blog about it very early on, and all how difficult actually it was really early on to do it. So yes, when I finished, Jo, you are correct. I may have had quite a lot of likes and a lot of people sighing a breath of relief going, she's never going to tweet about that again. So yes, so my doctorate work was about healthcare curriculum design, specifically diagnostic radiography. And I looked at using a digital tool called crowdsourcing to ensure that we have really diverse people and voices helping us design the curriculum. And it came from the concept of the first strategy, which is AHPs into action, and that used crowdsourcing. So I was really interested about how we could get people who might not engage with to help us consider what we should have in a radiography curriculum. So I did that in Bristol. I had 100 people join that crowdsource, which doesn't sound like a lot, but we used to only have 2 people help us design the curriculum, so 100. And of those 100, we mapped it to the demographics of people who lived in Bristol, and we found that the crowd, the 100 people, represented the demographics for that city. So for instance, really proud to see someone from the travelling community engaged. And then what we did was, once we had all their ideas, we themed them, and then we mapped it to the contemporary literature. So I have probably cited anyone who has ever written a piece about radiography education. You are cited in my doctorate. And I mapped it all to that. And then we mapped to which ideas would go into the curriculum. And we found most of the ideas, if not all of them, ended up in the final curriculum. And that curriculum is being delivered at the moment. So probably another study will be to see, when those students graduate, did the things actually stay in the curriculum?
Yeah.
It'd be a really good one. So I did that in the city of Bristol. And then I found out that the next strategy was going to be crowdsourced. And I thought, I wouldn't normally have gone for clinical fellowships because I really hadn't seen a radiographer in that position.
Yeah.
But I thought, they're asking to do crowdsource, and I might just happen to have done a thesis in crowdsourcing. So that was my pitch at the interview, saying, you've never had a radiographer, and I've learned loads from doing the smaller crowdsource. Let me do the big crowdsource. So yes, so that's how my thesis and my work align.
For anyone who's listening who might be thinking about research or going into strategy and policy, what would you say to them?
So the first thing, don't look at me if you want a career trajectory, because I'm quite opportunistic. I think the research, I tell people a lot of times that I self-funded that doctorate, and people, I did try to get funding and I just couldn't. Ironically, pre-COVID, crowdsourcing was quite a hard sell, and even my supervisors didn't want me to do crowdsourcing as my thesis, and I kind of convinced them. You know what I'm like. I convinced them. I said, look, do you want to come on this journey? Ethics was a bit of a nightmare for the university to kind of say, do you know what, we need to get into these spaces. COVID happens. Best thing when I go to Viva, because I'm like, I've been using this digital tool, so it's been a really interesting space. I also worked with the company Clever together. It's their platform, and they're really mature in what they do. And you have to be careful with crowdsourcing because sometimes people will use AI to analyse the data, etc., but they analyse everything individually. So back to your question, Alman, because I've totally gone off on that subject. So for me, research, unfortunately, it's probably something I've dabbled in rather than having had a structured career. But the self-funded, people say that's quite a privilege to be able to self-fund, but I'm going to twist it around a bit. I suppose I self-funded most of my masters as well. When you broke it down over 6.5 years, I think it worked out at £200 a month. And to me, that was, it wasn't easy. I've got a small child, and my husband, I'm saying, can I have some cash? But I've actually, career-wise, it's going to pay itself off. And I felt so strongly about my ideas that I thought I've got to make this happen. So yeah, so sorry, Naman, if you're looking for some kind of blueprint, I'm probably not the best radiographer to ask on that.
I think you undersell yourself a lot, actually, because what you do demonstrate is passion, motivation, resilience. And I certainly know, just from personal experience and talking to colleagues, that if a supervisor said, I'm not sure about that, probably 8 out of 10 people would be like, oh yeah, okay then, yes, I'll change my idea, I'll kind of rethink that. Whereas obviously sticking to your guns and really petitioning for what you wanted to do has paid off.
Definitely, and as I said, my supervisors. In fact, just a quick story. So this is a professional doctorate, and there's a reflective chapter, and that's why I just wanted to say about there's a really reflective component, and I put a reflective chapter in the end. I've spoken to lots of people with DPROPs, and my first supervisor said, you need to take that chapter out. It was 6 weeks before submission. That chapter, he said, I don't get it. And I had Dr. Leslie Robinson was my external advisor, and she said, no, you need to leave it in. And I thought, oh my God, what to do? So I thought, I love it. It's my favourite chapter. Yeah. Chapter 9 is my favourite, the last one. And I thought, I'm going to stick it in. I'm just going to have to argue out at Viva. That's what Viva is about. Is about defending, but not being defensive.
Yeah. And did they love it? Did they quiz you
on
it?
They loved it.
So again, it paid off. Yeah. So in your day-to-day job, what's coming next? I'm thinking about people who are working in clinical. What are they going to see change in practice as a consequence of the work that you're doing at that strategic level?
So currently, we're quite a very, very small team, and my work actually, so we're doing quite a bit on I do a lot on paramedic leadership, which is probably what you'd want to hear. But actually what's been really interesting about the paramedic leadership is even though we have a huge amount of work on leadership and AHP leadership, the person holding the pen, so I've been working with Professor Debs Harding, it's a piece of work I picked up halfway. It wasn't my work to start with. But as I wrote it, I thought, oh my gosh, I see radiography in here, I see how they work, I see the metrics that they use. And I thought, it might say the word paramedic, but I feel if radiographers were to read this, so some of our work, it feels like, I speak to people and I'm like, oh, I'm doing this with the ambulance service, or I'm doing this with paramedics, or I'm working with this profession. But actually, I really encourage people to go and look at the other professions, because we have quite similar challenges, or we could have learning from another profession, or other professions can learn from us as well. So I might say paramedic leadership, that's the next probably big thing that's coming out. But as I wrote that, I just thought, wow, there's so many strands that if a radiographer read this, we could just change the word to radiographer. Yeah.
Amazing.
It's interesting, isn't it? I think AHP is the paramedic side of things. So I'm looking at acute oncology, but they already do clinical examinations within their degree. We don't, obviously, you don't want to lose all the paramedics out on the street, but there's so much crossover of allied health professions, and we should really be working a bit closer together, I think.
Stronger together.
Well, and of course with HE now coming into NHS England, and so I sit in the medical directorate, and we have NHS WT now, and they're going to be in NHS England. So actually NAM, and that leans in, even though there's always been close working relationships, because Suzanne Rastrick does the chief, and Linda Hindle's one of her deputies, interim deputy Steve Tolan, and then we have another deputy is Beverly Hardin. So what we have, there's always been close links, but it's even closer now with that organisation coming and joining NHS England.
And what's next for you? Just within your career, do you know yet? Are you kind of are you waiting for that next opportunity?
I went to a really great presentation today about the Society of Radiographers Education and Career Framework, and I sat there thinking, I just thought, what's next? And I thought, I can't see past, my next project really.
Yeah.
So my career is very much like that. You see something, I think someone described as something shiny. I say, do you know what? I'll give it a go. What's the worst? The worst is that you learn. That's the worst case scenario, isn't it? So I currently don't know, but I do like strategy and policy, and I definitely like working in the allied health professions. But to this day, when people ask, what do you do? I say I'm a diagnostic radiographer.
Yeah, but isn't that amazing that you say that?
Yeah.
Because it's the advocacy for the profession, inspiring futures. It's something that we always say through RadChat, but that should be the first thing. If you look at our business cards, if you look at our email signatures, irrespective of what we are doing, we always put therapeutic radiographers first.
Brilliant.
Always. So it is kind of promoting your profession and what you're doing, which I think is so important. Do you miss kind of academia, clinical? Is there anything that you kind of miss from times gone by?
There's bits of every piece of the jigsaw. There's bits. So, for instance, I was saying to any academic colleagues, I don't miss marking at this time of year. It's really pressurised. It's when you get all those dissertations in and they've got to be turned around in less than 3 because of the programme boards. And Jo's going, she's thinking, yeah, I might be living that at the moment. So I don't, but then there's bits that I do miss. So what we've done, so some part of the way I've worked around that is I really miss working with learners, really miss. So we've been providing leadership placements at the Office of the Chief AHP Officer. I've had physiotherapy, speech language therapy, and I've had some diagnostic radiographers. And that's been, and for me, that's really lent into, when you've got 10 years in academia, and the whole joy of that job is working with learners and them excelling, not to have that. And we wanted to send Suzanne had a vision of showing people that you might think you can't host a learner, but you can host a learner. And yes, I have got that 10 years of experience, so I'm probably a bit more, can go into it a bit more easier. But there is nowhere too specialised or, in the system that can't host a learner.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, and hopefully we'll get you back again when you have switched jobs, changed careers, got a new project. Thank you.